It's Friday the 25th of August, and today we're mourning the loss of well-known and well-loved entrepreneur and air race pilot Creighton King, who died in his Cassutt racer on an apparent engine failure on takeoff from South Valley Airport in Utah. Here's what we know so far. The accident happened around noon on Wednesday here at the South Valley Regional Airport just south of Salt Lake City, located at the 4,606-foot elevation. With the warm temperatures the area has been experiencing, that would put the density altitude somewhere north of 6,000 feet. South Valley Airport is surrounded by houses with a soccer park just to the south of the airport. This accident occurred right just south of the airport, right in this area right here. Surveillance camera footage shows the aircraft coming down nearly vertical in what appears to be an almost flat spin. Complete loss of control of the aircraft. Eyewitness reports and tower tapes appear to indicate that Creighton was attempting to turn back to the airport. The aircraft involved in the accident was Creighton's Cassutt racer. These are Formula One racers developed specifically for the Formula One class of racing at the Reno National Championship air races. This is one of the oldest forms of classes of air racing. These aircraft developed with very specific design limitations, including the use of the O200 Continental engine spun up to a very high RPM. Initial reports indicate that Creighton was testing out a new engine or an overhauled engine or some recent engine work done on this Cassutt racer. This picture shown here by Tim O'Brien shows it a few years ago, back in 2017, with the more typical stock tail arrangement, and then Creighton had modified this Cassutt with a T-tail shown here. There it is, in an effort to reduce aerodynamic drag. Now, this aircraft was involved in a mid-air collision, or they swapped paint at the Reno National Championship air races a few years ago. I forget what year this happened. Miraculously, both aircraft flew away from this collision and landed safely, with what appears the propeller of Creighton's aircraft taking a chunk out of the race number 3 aircraft's right wing. So that would technically count as a prop strike on that aircraft engine. Whether that engine, I don't think this aircraft had been flown since, or it was not flown at the air races since this incident. I don't know if Creighton had replaced that engine with this new engine, or what kind of work he had done to the engine since this incident. If we go to YouTube today, you can see all sorts of content creators all talking about the impossible turn, and to me it seems like they're extolling the virtues of the fact that they could do it. But in the heat of the battle, when the power actually fails on you, it is such a startling event that there are too many variables to make a rational split decision as to when and where to attempt to turn the aircraft back to the airport. The Cassutt racer is a very high wing-loaded aircraft. Creighton was a very big fellow. The density altitude was very high. The altitude was very low. The impossible turn in his case would have been simply impossible to try to do. I've witnessed too many of these stall spin accidents here in video and in real life, and lost a couple of dear good friends, including Creighton now, to these impossible turn attempts. Pilot Debrief has a good example of one here where this pilot almost makes it. He survives, but the aircraft does end up stalling and crashing back into the runway. Here at my hometown airport of Grass Valley, Nevada County Airport, where we normally take off on runway 25, a downhill sloped runway with a lot of trees right off the end of the runway, I always brief that we're going to go straight ahead in the event of an engine failure, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 different areas located out ahead of the airport that I am going to intentionally crash into instead of attempting to turn around and make it back to the runway. There are just simply too many variables to attempt that impossible turn back to the runway unless you have a lot of altitude. And unfortunately, our city here has decided to go ahead and develop maximum housing right up to the edge of the runway here at Nevada County Airport over a several year long build out process. But right now as we speak, they're building houses right here in our best location for a safe emergency landing following an engine failure on takeoff off the end of our runway. And remember too, as always, the aircraft can stall at any indicated airspeed or any attitude, but only one critical angle of attack. On an engine failure on takeoff, you are going to have to push and push hard. Remember too that you cannot stall an aircraft at 0 Gs because you are simply falling. You need to keep the airflow attached to the wing and give yourself enough speed to maneuver into a safe spot or a flat and cheap spot to crash land the aircraft. Keep control of the aircraft. So if there's anything we can take away from the tragic loss of Creighton and his Formula One racer here is please reevaluate your thinking on the impossible turn. We're not super pilots. You're not going to be able to pull it off in the heat of an emergency. The startle factor is just too great. There are too many variables. When it actually happens to you, please consider going straight ahead in the event of an engine failure, especially if you're in any sort of a high performance aircraft like this. Thank you so much for your support of this channel, especially the folks over on Patreon that make this content possible. See you here.